Just past 2:47 in the morning on October 12, 2024, a 5-ton ammonia tank blew apart at the Maplewood Fertilizer Processing Plant in Indiana. A jet of toxic vapor hissed into the still night air, thick with the kind of chill that makes your bones ache. The control room alarm shrieked toxic gas leak, but plant manager Dale Mercer barely glanced up from his coffee. "Nah, just a pressure valve glitch," he muttered, swiveling his chair back around like nothing was wrong. Then his phone buzzed, a call from his wife, Linda, coming through with that tinny, faraway sound you get from a landline at 3 a.m. in the background. Their 6-year-old boy coughed, and the sound wasn't just any cough. It came with the wet, choking rattle of blood. "Dale, the smell-'s in the house, too," Linda whispered, voice cracking as she clutched their kid clothes. "Windows, now," Dale snapped, his usual gruffness suddenly hollow. He hung up before she could say more, then stared at the pulsing red light on the console. The hiss from the tank wasn't just getting louder, it was eating through the silence like rust through metal. Outside, the sky turned a nasty, bilious green where the ammonia met the cold air. People on the road woke up gagging, their curtains flapping like frantic wings as the invisible poison rolled toward their homes. A mom in a weathered farmhouse clutched her baby so tight the kid let out a tiny squeak. Outside, a high school kid dropped to the dirt, hands clawing at his throat as his lungs burned like fire. Back inside the plant, the emergency shutdown button sat there doing nothing. The safety checklist lay gathering dust on the console, pages yellowed from months of neglect. The system that was supposed to seal the tank automatically. Someone had turned it off weeks ago during some cost-saving drill. Now, the only thing louder than the silence was the weight of that decision. By 2:49 a.m., the first responders rolled in 2 fire trucks and a single ambulance, their lights slicing through the hazy dark. The dispatcher's voice crackled over the radio, all business but edged with something raw. "All units, chemical leak, possible civilian exposure. Move slow." Real slow? The fire chief, a guy who'd seen his share of industrial messes, took one look at the plant's skeleton crew fleeing the scene and knew this wasn't going to be pretty. Inside the Mercer house, the air turned thick enough to chew. The kid gagged, tiny hands scrabbling at his neck as his eyes rolled back. The family dog whined, tail tucked so tight it was practically between its legs. The walls, thin as paper, did nothing to keep the creeping cloud out. The plant's fence, once a solid line between danger and safety, looked about as sturdy as a chain-link curtain now. Night shift workers, still in their grimy coveralls, bolted for the exit, boots pounding the pavement in a frantic rhythm that didn't match the usual hum of machinery at all. Across the street, a neighbor's house erupted in chaos. A teenage girl's voice cut through the dark, sharp with panic. "Dad, something's wrong with the air." Her mom clutched a dish towel to her nose, eyes locked on the plant's smokestacks looming against the sky like jagged teeth. Emergency crews scrambled to set up decon tents, their tarps flapping like desperate shields against an enemy you couldn't even see. The ambulance doors flew open, and paramedics moved like they'd done this 1,000 times before, steady hands, sharp eyes, all while knowing the air itself could kill them. They checked the kid's pulse, the way it jumped like a scared rabbit and the blood bubbling up in his throat. Not good. Inside the control room, Dale finally snapped. The pressure gauge on the tank had gone past danger and straight into oh hell no. The alarms, ignored for so long, suddenly screamed like banshees in the night. His phone screen showed his son's face, small and choking, and for the first time the weight of what he'd done or failed to do landed like a punch to the gut. Those first 60 seconds of this story, they put you right in the middle of a disaster that would take 6 lives before sunrise. But this wasn't some freak accident. Across the country, the same story plays out again and again, industrial sites cutting corners, alarms ignored, and families paying the price. The 2023 USFA incident report counted over 1,200 residential fires tied to hazardous chemicals. Source: that's not just numbers. That's real people, real panic, real loss. The EPA's 2023 chemical accident report spelled it out plain. 18% of explosions that hurt civilians came from storing volatile junk the wrong way. Source: and in Clinton County, Ohio, last February, a chemical tank blew up near a home, killing a mom and her 6 kids. Locals said it wasn't just the fire, it was the fear they'd lived with for years, the sense that no one was listening. Sources: NIOSH research backs it up. Families near industrial chemicals don't just get scared. They get burned or worse, source. This is the recipe for disaster. Cut costs, ignore warnings, and suddenly an ordinary night turns into a nightmare. In Maplewood, Dale's decision to blow off a simple alarm didn't just break a tank, it shattered a family and left a whole town shaking. The question isn't if it'll happen again. It's when. As the ammonia cloud hung there, thick and metallic, emergency crews kept working, radios buzzing with updates while families huddled in homes that suddenly felt like cages. Somewhere in the distance, sirens wailed, but the real sound that stuck in people's heads was the quiet, desperate coughing of a mother trying to soothe her choking child. That sound, it'd haunt this town for a long time. The plant's failure wasn't just a machine breaking. It was a system that chose profits over people again and again. 6 kids lost isn't just a statistic. It's the sound of alarms ignored, warnings dismissed, and lives treated like collateral. That weight doesn't just disappear with the morning light. It lingers, a reminder that every shortcut, every ignored red flag has a cost that can't be measured in reports or insurance claims. Disclaimer: this narration is based on publicly available information. Names and specific details may be altered to protect privacy. The drone footage slices through the haze, the lens angling down to the skeletal wreck of Maplewood Chemicals storage yard. A charred shell still smoking at 9:15 a.m. on October 13, 2024. Detective Mara Reyes treads cautiously over twisted metal, boots crunching on broken glass. She drops to her knees beside the toppled ammonia tank. The forensic crew is already busy, gloved fingers probing the melted steel. One of the techs points. There, caught in the distorted gauge face, a needle sits stiff, glued in place. Reyes lets out a slow breath. Someone didn't want the leak detected. She doesn't phrase it as a question. It's a statement, a conclusion already brewing in her head. By 9:30, Gary Holt sits opposite her in the evidence tent. His hands shake. He grips a scorched notebook retrieved from the plant's break room. The edges are blackened, yet the pages are readable in spots. One entry jumps out, Dale Mercer's script, dated weeks before. Memo to self: report ammonia leak to OSHA. Just 2 lines, that's all it took to signal the start of the tragedy, but what should have been a routine safety note turned into a death sentence. 6 children, 1 mother, gone in under 2 hours. The camera pulls back. We spot fire trucks still parked at odd angles, ladders stuck in mid-air. The air still carries the scent of ammonia and burnt plastic. This isn't merely a crime scene, it's a systems failure, and the systems gave way long before the blast. In 2023 alone, the U.S. Fire Administration logged more than 1,200 residential fires involving hazardous chemicals, many near industrial sites like Maplewood. These aren't one-off events. They're patterns, and patterns have origins. We don't know the exact amount of volatile compounds stored at Maplewood before Oct. 13, but we do know this. Per the EPA's 2023 Chemical Accident Report, improper storage of volatile compounds contributed to 18% of accidental explosions that caused civilian casualties. 18%. That's not a rounding quirk. It's a systemic flaw. And it wasn't only Maplewood. The screen fades to black. Then a news clip from Feb 8, 2024, footage out of Clinton County, Ohio. A house blazes. Firefighters sprint, hoses winding through the yard. In the backdrop, a chemical storage tank ruptured, belching vapor. The caption reads, "Mother and 6 children killed in explosion linked to nearby chemical storage." This wasn't the first, it won't be the last, but it was preventable. The Clinton County fire wasn't a random accident. It stemmed from a chain of neglect that stretched back years. Local officials say residents voiced chemical safety concerns for decades. Yet when the blast hit, it wasn't merely a tank failing. Trust was eroding. Gary Holt tells Detective Reyes that Dale Mercer had been urging inspections for months, but each request was postponed. Every report got buried. They kept saying it was under review. Meanwhile, the ammonia kept seeping. The charred notebook sits open on Reyes' desk. Another page shows up Dale's handwriting again. OSHA inspection scheduled for November 5. But the leak is getting worse. November 5 never arrived. Not for Dale, not for Linda, not for their 6 kids. According to the CDC's National Institute for Occupational Safety and Health, residential fires tied to nearby industrial chemicals boost the odds of severe burns and fatalities among families by almost 40%. Nearly 40%. That's not just a number. It's an ignored warning. The camera hangs on the evidence tent. Ray's thumbs through the notebook, her face unreadable. Then a voice off screen, another investigator. "We've got pressure logs from the tank. They show inconsistent readings for weeks. Someone was masking the leak, masking it, not fixing it, not reporting it, masking it. So the real question isn't why the tank blew up. It's why nobody halted it before the needle froze. The probe is still fresh, yet the evidence is crystal. Maplewood Chemical boasts a history of violations. Public records reveal 3 OSHA citations in the last 3 years for improper storage and failure to report leaks. 3 in 3 years. Still, the plant kept running. Why? The answer might sit in the reaction or lack thereof to Dale Mercer's memo. Gary Holt says management brushed off his worries as routine. But routine isn't synonymous with safe. Routine isn't an excuse for a death. The aerial footage returns, now a wider view. The plant is sealed off. Yellow tape flutters in the breeze. Beyond, houses sit silent. Windows are dark, lives halted. One of those houses was Linda Mercer's, a mother of 6. A woman who rose that morning unaware she'd never see her children alive again. A family photo emerges in the evidence, edges frayed yet whole, 6 smiling faces. A birthday cake bearing 6 candles. The cake dates to Oct 12. The blast struck Oct 13. Ray's shuts the notebook. She glances at the camera, just a beat. Her stare is weighty. This wasn't a malfunction. This was a choice, and choices bring consequences. The screen fades to black. Text shows: Maplewood Chemical, 3 OSHA violations in 3 years. 0 enforcement actions. Then another line. 1,200 residential fires involving hazardous chemicals in 2023. How many more before the system changes? The question lingers, unanswered, because the system hasn't shifted. Not yet. The night air over Chicago throbbed with distant traffic, yet inside Agricor's glass and steel tower, the only noise was the soft click of a lock being forced. Ray's slipped the thin metal pick into the CEO's office door, feeling every second tick toward dawn. 2:00, we're in, Wexler whispered, his flashlight carving a narrow cone through the darkness. The desk lamp on the mahogany table sprang to life as Ray's lifted the cover, exposing a single drawer bolted shut. Inside, a hard drive rested in a black case, its label blunt, Maplewood Backup. Just the name sent a shiver down Ray's spine. Maplewood was the town where a mother and her 6 children perished in a blaze that still haunted the headlines. Source. Ray's slipped the drive into his pocket, the metal cool against his palm, and the 2 investigators vanished as silently as they'd arrived. The city's skyline glowed, oblivious to the secret now clutched in their hands. Back in the cramped safe house, the hard drive hissed as it spun to life. Ray's hit play, and Dale Mercer's voice flooded the room, raw, trembling, barely a whisper. Vance told me to hide the leak, said the town's survival depended on it. I didn't want to, but I was scared. Source, brief. The recording cracked. Then a second voice cut in, Vance himself, cold and unyielding. Mercer, if you report this, we're done. The words hung like a threat, a promise of silence that stretched back to the day the tank first began to hiss. Ray's felt the confession settle over him like a weight. He knew the stakes. Exposing a corporate hierarchy that could silence an entire community for profit meant targeting a chain of power that stretched from the plant floor to the boardroom. The personal cost was already clear: Mercer's guilt, a town's grief, and now his own life in the crosshairs. Source. The next morning, the news cycle churned. The fire in Clinton County had been cataloged as another tragic incident among 1,200 residential fires involving hazardous chemicals recorded by the Federal Fire Service that year. Yet the numbers masked a deeper truth. The explosion wasn't a twist of fate, but the result of a deliberate decision to conceal a leak. NIOSH research has long warned that being near industrial chemicals magnifies the lethality of residential fires, raising the odds of severe burns and fatalities for families. The Maplewood tragedy fit that pattern perfectly, but now the pattern was being rewritten. Ray's replayed the recording for Wexler, each syllable a nail driving deeper into the corporate coffin. If we go public with this, Wexler said, the board will lose everything: stock, reputation, the very right to operate in the Midwest. The implication was clear. The cover-up wasn't a single misstep, but a coordinated effort to protect a bottom line at the expense of human lives. The investigators knew they were walking a razor's edge. The CEO's office had been secured after the break-in, and security footage showed a lone silhouette slipping out just before the alarm. AgriCorps' legal team had already issued a statement promising full cooperation, a standard line that now rang hollow against the hard drive evidence. Source: brief. Reyes stared at the glowing screen, the recorder's red light pulsing like a heartbeat. "We have to get this to the public," he said, voice low. "If we don't, the next town will be the next victim." Wexler nodded, already drafting a secure upload path that would bypass AgriCorps' firewalls. The clock was ticking. Each minute brought the risk of a subpoena, a gag order, even a threat to their safety. In the days that followed, the investigators met a wall of corporate denials and legal threats. AgriCorps' PR machine launched a campaign to frame the incident as a tragic accident, citing the EPA's 2023 report that identified improper storage as a factor in 18% of explosions, resulting in civilian casualties. Yet the confession on the hard drive contradicted that narrative, putting intent squarely on the shoulders of those who chose concealment over safety. Community voices from Clinton County echoed through social media feeds, describing a profound sense of loss and fear, a collective memory that refused to be silenced. The investigators felt that anguish as a palpable force, driving them forward despite the looming legal gauntlet. When the story finally broke, the headline read, "Corporate leak, corporate lies, inside the AgriCorps cover-up." The impact was immediate. Stock prices tumbled, regulators launched a fresh inquiry, and the families of the victims found a sliver of vindication in the public record. Reyes watched the news anchor's eyes widen as the recording played, Vance's threat echoing across the nation. For Reyes, the climax was more than a scoop, it was a reckoning. The personal stakes, his career, his safety, his conscience, had been wagered against a system built to protect profit above all else. The professional stakes, exposing a network of collusion that spanned boardrooms and government agencies, now stood illuminated for the world to judge. The truth, once buried beneath layers of corporate jargon and legalese, now lay bare. A leak was hidden, a mother's warning ignored, and 6 innocent lives extinguished. The cover-up had been a calculated gamble, and the price of that gamble had finally been paid. The final frame lingered on the hard drive, its label still reading Maplewood Backup, a stark reminder that the smallest piece of data can topple the tallest tower. The story didn't end with the broadcast. It began anew, as advocates, regulators, and citizens demanded accountability from a corporation that once thought secrecy could shield it from consequence. Reyes turned off the monitor, the room falling into quiet. He knew the fight was far from over, but for the first time in weeks, the weight of the secret lifted. The truth had escaped the drawer, and the world would never be the same. At 7:00 a.m. on October 15, 2024, the lens glides across Maplewood County Memorial Park. One stark white cross now sits among freshly turned soil, the black letter names reading: Lucas Mercer 2, Ethan Mercer 4, Josie Mercer 6, Noah Mercer 8, Abigail Mercer 10, Caleb Mercer 12. A breeze rattles the flagpole, sunlight glints off the dust, and the hush feels like someone holding their breath. The camera pulls back, sweeping around the graves, each mound quietly insisting that a preventable disaster can turn into an indelible scar. That view echoes a nationwide trend. 2023 saw 1,200 residential fires tied to hazardous chemicals, often clustering near industrial sites. Source: USFA FEMA Incident Report 2023. At 7:05 a.m., Reyes steps up, eyes locked, voice weighed down by grief. 6 kids perished because a company cut corners and the town turned a blind eye, but their deaths weren't inevitable. They could have been prevented. Those words hit like a hammer on concrete, mirroring the EPA's 2023 chemical accident report that tied improper volatile compound storage to 18% of civilian impact explosions. Source: EPA Chemical Accident Report 2023. The lens pauses on Reyes's clenched hands before swinging back to the rows of white crosses. A faint text overlay blinks. Sincere grief cannot be undone, but accountability can be forged. Across the country, families in Clinton County, Ohio, tell a story that feels just as horrific. On February 8, 2024, a nearby chemical storage tank blew up, taking a mother and her 6 children. Source: NY Times 2024. Neighbors spoke of a profound sense of loss and fear, their words weaving into NPR's post-event coverage. Source: NPR 2024. NIOSH data reveal that when house fires spark next to industrial chemicals, the chance of severe burns and death jumps dramatically. Source: CDC NIOSH. The Mercer tragedy isn't a lone incident. It's just another data point in a broader, avoidable pattern. The camera comes back to the cemetery, now drenched in late morning light. Those white crosses sit as mute witnesses to a systemic failure, regulatory lapses, corporate neglect, and civic complacency. Change can happen, but it takes more than just mourning. It needs public outrage that turns into pressure on lawmakers, corporate boards, and the agencies policing hazardous material storage. When folks push for stricter enforcement and demand transparent reporting, the whole equation shifts. The ask is clear and urgent. Share this story, sign petitions for tougher chemical safety laws, show up at your local council meetings, and hold elected officials to account for enforcement. The next generation will inherit whatever choices we make today. If we let the Mercer kids be remembered only as names on a cross, we give up the chance to stop the next tragedy. If we funnel our grief into a collective push for accountability, their loss can spark real change. The lens pulls back one last time, the cemetery shrinking against the horizon. The voice steadies, shedding heaviness for resolve. We owe it to Lucas, Ethan, Josie, Noah, Abigail, and Caleb to turn sorrow into action. Let their memory be the spark that lights a safer future for every child. The screen fades, leaving viewers with one lingering question. Will you answer?